Vasquez and Ranking Member Shabbat, thank you for the hearing. Thank you to the witnesses for lending their expertise. I appreciate the interesting discussion about some new and long-term solutions, some of them potentially expensive, but I hope to address briefly one beneficial policy change we can make right away to an existing program so more small businesses remain standing once this crisis is over. 2 weeks ago, our committee heard from SBA Associate Administrator James Rivera on the implementation of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program in the course of the pandemic. To be frank, I believe SBA's rationale for limiting the size of idle loans to $150,000 to have left a great deal to be desired. This decision not only sorely disappointed the expectations of businesses hoping to receive relief, it was an incomprehensibly bad credit decision. After all, if a business's intrinsic financial circumstances warrant a $2 million loan, to extend it a $150,000 loan is a futile act, which guarantees not only failure of the business, but of course a default on the inadequate loan as well. And that in turn negatively impacts U.S. taxpayers. Unfortunately, it is up to Congress to fix SBA's error. When reflecting upon our hearing and talking to constituents, one idea suggested was to allow idle borrowers to go back for a second idle or modify the EIDL loan balance to receive a higher amount. The idea would be if a business received an idle for less than the appropriate amount, it could receive a supplemental loan for the difference between the appropriate amount according to SBA underwriting standards and the amount previously loaned under SBA's misguided $150,000 limitation. For example, if Company X would have qualified for an EIDL for $1 million to help it weather this crisis, but only received $150,000, Congress would allow that business to reapply for a second EIDL worth up to $850,000. To restore constituents' faith in our relief efforts and those of SBA, it is important, I submit, that we provide them the relief that was promised to them on the front end. To the panel, Mr. Palmer, we've had good conversations. You've always supported and been open about common sense solutions. Do you think this idea of allowing businesses effectively to double dip on EIDL would help more businesses to weather the short-term storm?
I'm not sure I'd call it double dipping because the statutory language, I think, was a $2 million cap. I mean, I think there's an obligation for agencies to follow the explicit language of the law written by the legislative branch.
That's correct.
One thing I think is just the right thing to do legally. We're a nation of laws. But two, there's clear expectations from small businesses. If small businesses were dedicating their limited time and resources to accessing amount that the law specifically allowed and didn't know they could access, but they really couldn't access it, that's not really fair to them. And this disaster has gone on longer than expected. So I think allowing people to go back to get the caps that they need, knowing the damages that they have, seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. And I agree. I think my choice of term is probably a poor one. It really is simply going back and allowing them to have what was intended in the first instance. Dr. Cook, would you agree with Mr. Palmer's assessment of that idea?
Yes, I would.
Ms. Cohen, I heard what you said about the restaurant legislation that would provide grants, and I'm sure that would be your preference. But do you know of any additional restaurants that could take advantage of the ability to go back and get the full EIDL amount or something closer to it, depending on its own circumstances? That would be a welcome opportunity for some.
I can't speak for all restaurants, but I certainly know that no restaurant I know is at the moment can possibly sort of fathom the idea of taking on more debt while we're still trying to climb out of the situation that we're in, unfortunately.
Do you think if they had a choice between additional indebtedness that would allow them operating capital to continue or not receiving any benefit, they would like to have that opportunity?
That's a tough choice.
Yeah.
A little bit of a Sophie's choice there. I'm not sure. I mean, yes, I think most restaurateurs would like to stay open, but I also know that it seems like impossible to work with this unbelievable debt hanging over your head at a time right. It seems like we might never be able to actually open at full capacity again.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Cohen. I think ultimately that choice is debt's going to be hanging over somebody's head, over the taxpayers or over the business owners. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My time's expired, I think, or just about.